John had just changed into his suit and was ready to toast the guests when Emily, dragging her wedding dress, rushed over with a worried look on her face.
John, David called me. He had an accident during a race and got hurt. I need to go to him right now.
But we're about to start the toasts. Do you know what day it is today?
The guests were already seated, and the engagement party was about to begin. Emily's sudden urgency took him by surprise.
I know, but he's hurt. It's serious.
Emily was on the verge of tears, looking at John with watery eyes. He sighed, feeling a bit defeated.
Don't worry. I'll find someone to check on him, okay?
But Emily suddenly pulled her hand away and shouted at him.
John, you wish he was gone. Do you really think you'll find someone to help him?
Her words cut through John like a knife. Back when he was pursuing Emily, he hadn't been kind to David. But he never thought she would see him this way.
It's just an engagement party. We can have another one. I've agreed to marry you, isn't that enough?
She pushed John aside and slammed the door behind her. Frustrated with her wedding dress, she tore off the hem. John felt as cold as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. Watching her walk away, he made a silent decision.
Emily, it's time for us to end this.
When Emily ran off to someone else, and that someone wasn't John, he finally woke up. This engagement party was a joke. He walked into the hall and, in front of both families, called off the event.
What are you doing? Do you think today is a day for jokes?
Emily left. The engagement party can't go on.
It was only then that she realized Emily wasn't by his side. Aunt Lisa, having just finished a phone call, looked upset but still apologized.
Johnny, this is Emily's fault. I apologize on her behalf. Can you give her a chance to make it right?
Aunt Lisa, I was too impulsive about this marriage. I hope Emily finds someone she truly loves.
After canceling the party, John went home and gathered all of Emily's belongings, ready to throw them away. In the box were letters he had written to her. Emily and John had grown up together and were each other's first love. During their relationship, he felt like the happiest person in the world. But then David appeared. Emily said David was her idol, her ideal type. John had never seen her care so much about someone. So, he started competing with David in everything. Once, David beat John in a competition, and Emily cheered beside him, then ran to congratulate David, leaving John standing alone. There were so many people congratulating David on stage, he wouldn't miss one. But John's disappointed heart longed for encouragement. In the past, she would have patted his shoulder and said with a smile, "It's just an award. We'll get it next time." John couldn't beat David academically, so he tried to outdo him in basketball. When he scored several consecutive points, he looked at the audience, hoping for her cheers. But her eyes were fixed on David. After the game, he ran to her excitedly, only to receive a dismissive comment.
What's the use of being good at basketball?
She then turned to help David wipe his sweat with a smile. In the second half, David played even harder, and they were both drenched in sweat by the end. David had a few bruises on his arms. Emily got angry and glared at John.
John, are you crazy? It's just a game. Apologize to him right now.
She tenderly tended to David's injuries.
It's okay. Getting hurt is part of playing basketball. It shows John gave it his all, which is a sign of respect for his opponent.
He's not giving it his all, he's being reckless.
Emily only had eyes for David. She took David to the infirmary, leaving John with a cold remark.
Don't follow us.
It was the first time Emily had gotten angry with John over someone else. Before John could react and question Emily about her feelings, she approached him, holding a self-made scarf.
John, I'm sorry. I was wrong today. I shouldn't have gotten mad at you.
John had thought about not forgiving her so quickly, but seeing her nose red from the cold wind, he couldn't help but want to hold her.
So, have you forgiven me? I really know I was wrong.
John nodded, and Emily stood on her tiptoes to kiss him, then started to act cute.
You don't know how scared I was when you looked so angry today.
It won't happen again.
Emily giggled, making a solemn promise.
Don't worry, you'll always be the most important person in my heart.
Tears fell onto the envelope, pulling John back to reality. He placed the scarf Emily had given him into the box. Since he had decided to end it, he needed to make a clean break. The box was too heavy, and John's right arm suddenly throbbed with pain.
It must be an old injury acting up again.
He found a small cart. After throwing these things into the trash bin downstairs, he went to the hospital. As the coldest days of winter approached, the temperature dropped sharply. Every time this happened, John's right arm would hurt terribly.
John, you're here.
Grace looked behind John, puzzled that Emily wasn't with him. She and Emily never got along, so she naturally didn't ask.
I've broken up with her.
He found a place to sit. Grace's expression changed several times. Afraid she would gossip and not focus on treating his wound, John briefly explained the situation to her. When Grace heard that Emily had run away from the wedding, she wasn't as surprised as John had expected. Instead, she comforted him.
It's okay, John. With your qualities, you won't have trouble finding a girlfriend.
She treated his wound, and just as she finished applying the medicine, Emily's call came through. Seeing the caller ID, Grace avoided eye contact and made an excuse to leave.
Your wound is strained, and with the weather changes, the scar tissue has grown. You should stay in the hospital for observation for a few days. If there's nothing else, I'll be going. Call me if you need anything.
John nodded and thanked her. He hadn't planned on answering Emily's call. After repeatedly declining her calls, his phone was bombarded with messages from Emily.
John, where are you? I miss you so much. My mom said you called off the engagement. I don't believe it. I want to hear it from you. John, please answer the phone. I'm begging you. This time I really know I was wrong. Will you forgive me?
John's hand holding the phone began to tremble slightly. The pain in his arm intensified. He put the phone on silent and lay back on the bed. Laughter came from the next room. It was a young couple. Though John couldn't hear what they were talking about, their laughter was clear and bright. It reminded him of a day many years ago. The same scene, lying in bed, listening to the sounds from the next room. At that time, his wound had flared up for the first time. When Emily found out, she rushed over anxiously.
I'll stay with you, John.
John was overjoyed, thinking that the pain was worth it.
I'm going to get some hot water.
An hour passed, and she hadn't returned. John was worried sick, calling her repeatedly. The line was busy. Just as he was about to go out and look for her, he received a message from her.
John, I'm sorry. David said his car was rear-ended, and the driver wouldn't let him go. I'm his only friend in the city, and I can't leave him alone.
After David called her away, she never came back. From David's social media posts, John found out they had spent the whole night playing games at an internet cafe, completely ignoring the fact that he was still in the hospital. Ever since David appeared, the time John spent alone with Emily never exceeded half a day. David always had various excuses to call Emily away from him. And Emily never asked for John's opinion. When faced with the choice between John and David, John always received a sorry. The alcohol seeped through John's skin into the wound, and the pain made him more alert. These bad memories had become a thorn, deeply embedded in his heart. But no matter how deep the thorn, it would eventually soften. Now that John had said goodbye to the past, a new beginning awaited him. Speaking of injuries, that was a long time ago. Now, it seems somewhat insignificant. In the last semester of our senior year, Emily was under immense pressure because she wanted to get into the same university as me. This led to her developing depression. She started walking up and down the stairs frequently. One day, Emily deliberately missed a step. With a loud noise, she tumbled down the stairs. I rushed to catch her, but in the process, my right hand hit the ground, resulting in a severe injury. With the college entrance exams approaching, I didn't want to miss the opportunity. Ignoring the pain, I pushed through and completed the exams, leaving a lasting injury.
Her condition has worsened, and her life could be at risk.
After the exams, I devoted myself to being with Emily. I coaxed her to take her medication, took care of her meals, encouraged her daily, and took her to see a psychologist. Emily became especially dependent on me. I can say that I accompanied her through her darkest days. Later, Emily recovered, but she couldn't remember much from the time she was ill.
It's good to forget those sad times.
She smiled, her eyes filled with affection as she looked at me.
There's one thing I remember. When I was sick, you were always by my side.
Her gaze made me blush, and I turned my head away. From that day on, Emily started treating me even better. When we got to university, it was only natural that we got together. But this injury left a 7 or 8 centimeter scar on my arm. Due to poor recovery, it became hypertrophic and unsightly. I felt somewhat self-conscious because of it. No matter how hot it got, I didn't dare to wear short sleeves. In the summer, to prevent infection from excessive sweating, I changed clothes frequently. One day, someone secretly took a photo of me changing, and the scar on my fair skin was shockingly visible. The picture quickly spread throughout the school. Every day, I faced malicious glances and gossip from others.
Hey, kid. I heard you have a snake-like scar on your arm. Show us.
What could it be? I've never seen such an ugly scar. If I had a scar like that, I'd rather not live.
They laughed, trying to tear off my clothes. I clung to them desperately, enduring their punches and kicks. In the end, it was Emily who came and drove them away.
People like you, who take pleasure in mocking others, don't deserve to be in this world.
She encouraged me to report the incident to the teachers and ask them to find out who posted the photo. A few days later, the results came out. It was David. I later found out that Emily had come to plead on his behalf.
John, it was David's fault. I'm here to apologize for him. He was just curious and accidentally shared the photo. He didn't mean to. Can you forgive him?
How ridiculous! My girlfriend pleading for someone who had hurt me.
Emily, he's not a child. Do you really believe it was an accident? Let the school handle his punishment as they see fit.
The school is talking about expelling him. John, don't be so petty. The scar is already ugly, can't people comment on it?
I got angry too, and we had a big fight. We didn't speak for a long time until Emily's mother intervened to mediate our conflict. Not wanting to see her sad, I privately went to the teacher to plead for leniency. David wasn't expelled but had to take a 2-year break from school. As Grace was changing my bandage, I told her about the incident, omitting the part about my fight with Emily. She paused for a moment, surprised at how calmly I could talk about it now. Her eyes showed a hint of sympathy, and her hands moved more gently.
This scar isn't ugly. I think it's cute, like a caterpillar waiting to transform into a butterfly.
Transforming into a butterfly, rebirth. I like that description.
We looked at each other and suddenly laughed. It was the first genuine laugh I'd had in days. Suddenly, the door opened. Emily stood there, looking exhausted. When she saw Grace, her brows furrowed.
What are you two doing?
I gestured for Grace to leave, knowing nothing good would come from them being in the same room. As Grace passed by Emily, they exchanged hostile glances. I rubbed my temples and asked Emily why she was here.
I'm here to take care of you. John, I promise I'll never leave you again. I'll listen to you from now on.
We're over. I don't need your care. If there's nothing else, please leave.
Emily tried to hold my hand, but I pulled away.
No, I don't believe it. You've loved me for so long. You can't just stop loving me. You must be lying, right?
Yes, I did love you before. But it's over now. No matter how much you cling, we can't go back.
Emily started crying, tears streaming down her face. In the past, I would have felt sorry for her, held her, and comforted her. But now, I felt nothing. She had drained all the love I had for her.
Don't come looking for me again. I don't want to see you.
Emily cried for a long time that day, until her eyes were swollen and her voice hoarse. Maybe she thought crying was her trump card. But she was wrong. It only works on those who love her, and unfortunately, I no longer had any feelings for her. No love, no hate. John, with a look of determination on his face, stepped forward.
John, are you crazy? It's just a game. Apologize to him right now.
She tended to David's injuries tenderly.
It's okay. Getting hurt is part of playing basketball. It shows John gave it his all, which is a sign of respect for his opponent.
He's not giving it his all. He's being reckless.
Emily only had eyes for David. Otherwise, she would have noticed John's injuries too. She took David to the infirmary, leaving John with a cold remark.
Don't follow us.
It was the first time Emily had gotten angry with John over someone else. The journey home was long, a 4 to 5 hour drive. Grace kept chatting with me. We were high school classmates and later got into the same university. She was beautiful and elegant, and many pursued her during our school days. But now, she's still single, which I found puzzling. She mentioned that she had always had feelings for someone, but that person had been chasing another girl for 7 years. A sudden jolt hit my heart, and a thought flashed through my mind that it might be me. I quickly dismissed the idea.
Don't worry. One day, he'll notice you.
Grace nodded, her straightforward gaze making my face heat up. I looked away, listening to her continue.
But this time I'm going home for a blind date. I don't know if I can wait for him.
You will.
My home and Grace's were not far apart, about a 20-minute drive. During the few days at home, I tried to strengthen my right arm. I didn't plan to tell Emily about the injury. Nor did I want to use it to seek anything or make her feel more guilty. Even now, I would still make the same choice. One day, as usual, I was exercising in the yard. I overheard the neighbors chatting outside.
I heard Dr. Susan's daughter has been refusing to eat these days.
I heard too. Such a pretty girl being forced into blind dates all the time. I heard this time it's with the Smith family's eldest son who has some issues.
Dr. Susan and her husband are too harsh, wanting a grandchild so badly that they disregard their daughter's happiness.
I've heard a lot about Dr. Susan's parents pushing her to get married. Remembering what Grace said yesterday, I was sure they were talking about her. My heart raced, and I almost dropped the keys. I drove straight to Grace's house. Outside, I could hear her mother banging on the door and shouting,
You ungrateful girl, open the door!
It's just a meeting, not a marriage proposal.
Going on a blind date with him is as good as a death sentence.
I walked into the house and politely greeted Aunt Lisa.
Who are you? Here to laugh at us?
I'm Grace's boyfriend. I need to talk to her.
In a moment of desperation, I lied. Hearing me claim to be Grace's boyfriend, her mother's expression changed instantly, and she invited me to sit.
Come, sit down. I'll make some tea. She called into the house. Why didn't you tell us you had a boyfriend?
Grace opened the door and was visibly surprised to see me on the sofa. She mouthed, asking what I was doing. I smiled slightly and waved her over.
Gracie, come sit next to me.
Grace ran over and pulled me outside. Behind us, her mother teased.
This girl, can't you be a bit more reserved?
John, are you crazy? It's just a game. Apologize to him right now.
She tenderly tended to David's injuries.
It's okay. Getting hurt is part of playing basketball. It shows John gave it his all, which is a sign of respect for his opponent.
He's not giving it his all. He's being reckless.
Emily only had eyes for David. Otherwise, she would have noticed my injuries too. She took David to the infirmary, leaving me with a cold remark.
Don't follow us.
It was the first time Emily had gotten angry with me over someone else. John, are you crazy? It's just a game. Apologize to him right now.
You think I'm going to apologize for playing hard?
It's okay. Getting hurt is part of playing basketball. It shows John gave it his all, which is a sign of respect for his opponent.
He's not giving it his all. He's being reckless.
Emily only had eyes for David. She took him to the infirmary, leaving John with a cold remark.
Don't follow us.
It was the first time Emily had gotten angry with John over someone else. John, are you crazy? It's just a game. Apologize to him right now.
It's okay. Getting a little roughed up is part of playing basketball. It shows John gave it his all, which is a sign of respect for his opponent.
He's not giving it his all. He's being reckless.
Emily only had eyes for David, not noticing my injuries. She took David to the infirmary, leaving me with a cold remark.
Don't follow us.
It was the first time Emily had gotten angry with me over someone else.